Greetings and salutations, O brave new world that has such people in it. I'm Curt Tofteland, founder of Shakespeare Behind Bars and co-founder of the Shakespeare in Prisons Network. Due to the global pandemic, we have decided to move our on-site face-to-face Shakespeare in Prisons Conference 4, hosted by Shakespeare at Notre Dame in conjunction with the Folger Shakespeare Library online. With that goal in mind, we want to make use of the best of virtual technology presented in the most captivating and innovative way. This is the first of several hour-long conversations that we are producing to lead us to the virtual Shakespeare in Prison Conference 4 to be presented from October 19th through to November the 20th. The global pandemic of 2020 hit humans with a vengeance. In this tumultuous time, when in a few short months, the harsh reality of COVID-19 has claimed the deaths of 100,000 plus Americans, trashed our economy and left it in ruins, driven tens of thousands of small businesses to shutter and not to reopen, forced large corporations to request bankruptcy protection. The entirety of our society, culture, and way of life has been impacted. The current national unemployment rate is approaching 25%, 1 in 4 Americans. My own profession of theater currently has a 60% plus unemployment rate. The national debt is 25 trillion and growing, and the polemic political divide between the Democrats and Republicans is wider and a deeper abyss than in anyone's memory. The ruthlessness of COVID-19 has not only exposed the dark underbelly of the long-standing, pre-existing inequities in our United States of America, but also revealed many of those same inequities in our arts communities. The arts, particularly the performing arts, are under grave assault. Until a vaccine is discovered, approved, manufactured, and distributed, gatherings of humans within close proximity of each other will be too dangerous to permit. I profoundly believe our artists, innovators, and creatives will keep the arts alive, both during and after this current plague. We artists can't help ourselves. We must create. And historically, the arts have survived previous assaults over tens of hundreds of years. My playwright of preference, William Shakespeare, wrote 3 of his greatest masterpieces, Antony and Cleopatra, Macbeth, and King Lear, during the outbreak of the bubonic plague in 1603. But the arts have to change to meet the challenges of the new normal in a world that is in transformation. Fortunately, with transformation comes opportunity. When we, in fact, return to the post-pandemic world, not only will our theaters need to be disinfected, but our theater culture will also need to be fumigated. In this current limbo crawling between past and future, arts professionals have the opportunity to ask deeply pointed and fully imaginative questions about the nature of our art form and its relevance to society. Is theater really necessary? Aristotle in his Poetics said 2,000 years ago, humans are an imitative animal. We learn through mimicry, a form of acting, and through enactment, the basis of drama. 5 questions that I've been asking myself in this dark time. 1, in the post-pandemic New World Order, what might grow out of the chaos, death, and political divisiveness? 2, when all that was before is no more, what do I as an artist, innovator, and creative dare to dream? 3, what do I envision the new normal to be? 4, in that vision, how will I be of service in making the arts more relevant and deeply necessary? And 5, what is the light that I wish to shine into the darkness? I know I don't want to go back to, quote, normal. That normal wasn't working all that well anyway. Rather, I'd like to use this global pandemic as a springboard into the new normal that not only embraces more kindness, compassion, and empathy in myself, my colleagues, and our audiences, but also embraces more inclusivity, equity, parity, justice, and relevance in the arts community at large. Michael Service, a Broadway actor, said, "I wanted to make theater that leaned into discomfort, embraced uncertainty, asked deep questions, questioned the status quo, rigorously making more room and ceaselessly trying to reflect and see our shared humanity." Personally, I've returned to the empty space of Peter Brook, toward a poor theater of Jerzy Grotowski, and the theater of the oppressed of August Boal. They stripped theater down to what was fundamental, an empty space filled with actors from the community telling their compelling stories. Today, I've asked a number of colleagues to imagine the brave new world through their personal experience of working in the arts arena for many years. Our guests include Sabra Williams of Creative Acts, Wendy Staggs, a published poet and returned citizen, Alma Robinson of California Lawyers for the Arts, Wendy Jason of Justice Arts Coalition, and Laurie Brooks of the William James Association. Each guest will have about 10 minutes to share their thoughts of the new normal and how they will be an active, creative, innovative, and relevant participant. And now we go to Laurie Brooks.
Hello, I'm Laurie Brooks. I'm the executive director of the William James Association. We're based here in Santa Cruz, lovely Santa Cruz. Our main program for the last 42 years has been the Prison Arts Project. I've been with William James for 30 years myself, and the director since 2001. And we provide a real wide variety of art programs in California state prisons, primarily visual, literary, performing, music, lots of theater, and it's become my life's work. It's just really wonderful to be involved with this work that is just so, it's so powerful. It's just so important for us to bring the creative life force into prisons where it is needed more than anywhere else I can think of. And we know that because we do that. You are colleagues in this work, and it's just really important. We have been in this position that might be coming before, around having lost our funding around 2003. The California state budget took a dive, and they almost eliminated the California Arts Council, and they eliminated the contract funding for the variety of artists that we brought into prisons across the state, not just William James Association, but our colleagues that we do this work with across the state, arts organizations of all kinds, and the solace that I found in 2003 when we lost everything and I went on unemployment and we moved out of our office and we had to give everybody notices that everything was over, was just that the creative spirit will not be denied. It's it is who we are as human beings, and it's really important to keep that in mind, that we who bring in arts experiences and come to do collaborative, engaging art programs inside the prisons are really on a peer level with the participants that we work with. I know that the artists that we work with, William James Association, get so much more out of the experience than they put into it. So I know it's just a super important experience for everybody that's involved. And I know it really changes the culture and the environment inside the prison as well. So, I mean, I just think it's really important to keep in mind that, whatever comes, there's always going to be and we've already planted a lot of seeds inside the institutions. We're just now getting a chance to provide programs that are going to be on paper, not going to be the same, but we're glad to be able to have this opportunity to start to go back in and have that engagement, even though it's going to be a little flat because it's two-dimensional and not three-dimensional. So what do I think is important around the future? I think it's a lot what's important right now. I know I'm finding a lot of inspiration from, well, actually, there was a great statement from Anna DuVernay this morning on the news about it's not our job to explain to white folk how to combat racism. And I think that's a real important edge that I know I'm constantly working on, and we're really doing a lot of work with our artists around just being more and more conscious all the time around how to address the needs of people who come from a real wide variety of cultural backgrounds, and providing them with the kind of sustenance that supports them in developing their cultural connections, and just that people always want to matter. So I think a lot of what we do is just prison or from a connection with their family members, and be able to have that sense that they matter, because we've placed them in prisons, which basically is a statement that you don't matter. We're going to sideline you. So I love, also really excited to be learning from Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategies. That's really kind of where we are right now. We're working week to week. We don't know what's going to come. We just have to be present. We have to be fluid. We have to be nimble. We have to be creative and open-hearted and caring. And that's where we are right now. I think we need to continually be relevant to the shifting demographic and political and I don't know, I guess financial now, economic situations that we're facing. And I think that's a lot of what's ahead, is just really being present and nimble and connected and all of that. So, and the other person that I'm really enjoying learning from right now is Nicole Fleetwood, and I'm reading her book, Marking Time. And that's just a really beautiful, beautiful look at the whole mass incarceration and the creative work that comes from that, both artists who are inside the institutions and artists from the out who are looking in and really making remarkable work that calls attention to the disparities and just the oppressive nature of prisons. So I will call upon somebody else, except it's not in front of me.
I'll come up. I'll come back in. Thank you, Laurie, for sharing that. I'll ask Sabra Williams of Creative Acts to go next. Sabra.
Thank you, Curt. Thank you very much, and honored to be in the presence of my compatriots. And some of them I've known for a very, very long time and have worked together on the battlefields of advocacy for a long time and behind bars. I guess for me, I wanted to talk a little bit about advocacy. I like to make a little context for these things. And so I guess I just really wanted to think for a second about what is advocacy, because if we're going to look at the future, we have to really understand what we're dealing with presently and what we've been dealing with in the past. So in my experience, advocacy is speaking on behalf of a population or a theme to an issue. And so if we're speaking on behalf of a community that we're not a part of, it requires a very much higher level of self-reflection and a rigorous centering of those who are most impacted. My particular advocacy has revolved around the arts. I'm an artist, and the justice system in America. I am not impacted directly by the system. I will say, in terms of looking in the future, nobody knows. There is not a single person on this earth who knows what comes next, or what the arts or the justice space will look like in the future. And in fact, that is the point. We're not supposed to know. That's where the lessons are. And we have to resist this desire to know, to be the first to know and the first to say. Otherwise, we're going to miss the lessons of this time. So I guess, you know, where I come from in advocacy is I'm from the UK. I'm an immigrant. I am a woman of color. I'm an artist, and I've been working in the justice space for more than 15 years. When I came here and started the Actors Gang Prison Project back in 2000, well, I started working on it 2005. We went into prison 2006. I was absolutely shocked by American mass incarceration. Obviously, no country is great, but you know, with incarceration, but America is number one. And so I really thought that I needed to go to university to really understand it, but I didn't have those 4 years. So I did my own version of university by listening and reading and learning and watching. I have been advocating on a city, a state, national level during the Obama administration, working on legislation and the arts and social justice and legislation. I think it's useful to think about what you need to be an effective advocate, especially at these times. And I think one of the things you need is to thoroughly and continuously educate yourself on the subject. I know I have to continuously do this. I have to have passion and learn how to articulate my passion. I have to know how to speak to the audience in front of me, not the audience in my head. So if I'm speaking to people who are more into public safety, let's say, than, you know, programming, I have to know how to speak to them, and I have to educate myself so that they can hear me. I have to know when to stand back and when to stand forward. I have to know when to speak and when to listen. And I have to have a profound understanding of both urgency and patience. And right now is a time for patience. And I think I need to also understand my own positionality and that of others, and when that changes. And for me, it's been super helpful to think of advocacy as long-term, that we're building relationships. We're not just asking for favors or begging sometimes for favors. I would say what to expect in the future for advocacy, and now and in the past, is expect support and opposition. There'll always be folks who will support the work, and many who will become advocates too, following your example. Some will get behind it with funding and or legislative change. There will also always be opposition. So expect to be personally attacked, sometimes from surprising quarters, and to have your voice silenced and your work questioned. And to realize that this is the very training that you need to be an effective advocate. And so I guess what I would just finish with, we're hearing a lot right now that America is deeply divided in this crisis. But what we don't want to acknowledge necessarily is that it has always been deeply divided, particularly since what I call America 2.0, or since the Native genocide in this country. Right now, we're just seeing it clearly yet again, because division and hatred are being stoked up, and because cell phones exist, and we're finally able to witness Black people being lynched on the street and hear about the missing and murdered Native American women and girls, to name but two outrages. So like I said, I don't think anybody has all the answers, but one thing I do know is that ignoring it, hoping somebody else is going to step up, hoping it goes away, has never, ever worked in the history of mankind. And particularly for us, those of us who are working in the arts and justice space in 2020, in this pandemic, we have an absolute responsibility to do the uncomfortable, hard, painful work of self-reflection in order to advocate effectively. And this is what we could be doing right now. This self-reflection, this thinking about what we've done in the past, how we've operated in the past, how we've partnered or haven't partnered in the past. This self-reflection is what this time is about, or supposed to be. And if we refuse to do that, we should probably step back and let others who are willing to do that go forward instead. There are no longer any sidelines. And that's all I got to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sabra. Next up, Wendy Jason of the Justice Arts Coalition.
Thanks, Curt. Hello, my name is Wendy Jason. I am the Managing Director and founder of the Justice Arts Coalition. The Justice Arts Coalition is a national network that provides information about and resources for people creating art in and around the US carceral system. Through outreach to and collaboration with incarcerated artists and teaching artists, arts organizations, scholars, advocates, and allies, and through our relationships with families and loved ones most directly impacted by mass incarceration, the Justice Arts Coalition is trying to harness the transformative power of the arts to reimagine justice. What we are focused on right now, as much as I'd like to be able to think about the future and what Curt has called the new normal, is adapting to what is the current reality. We as a national network and a unifying body amongst organizations and individuals all over the country who are truly, truly dedicated to ensuring that folks in prison have access to creative opportunities for creative expression, are trying to figure out how to make sure that that access isn't completely cut off in this time when arts organizations, teaching artists can no longer get inside to run their programs, to provide community building and arts opportunities for folks who are experiencing now even more of more sense of isolation than they already were. So we are gathering together our members of our network across the country to identify some of the needs that are arising right now as a result of the pandemic, and start to try to address those needs. So we have a few focus groups that are working on things like assessing needs around distance learning and new forms of ways to provide arts engagement opportunities for folks inside, acknowledging just how valuable, how meaningful those opportunities are for people who often don't have an opportunity to share their stories or to express themselves, their identity in a way that can be heard and seen and valued by folks on the outside. So we have people, working on also hopefully developing some new curricula and distance learning opportunities for organizations and teaching artists across the country to make use of, so that they can somehow continue their programming. In most cases, there hasn't been any ongoing access via mail or via streaming video for organizations and teaching artists to continue their programming. So we're trying to fill that gap right now. We have groups of folks who are looking at how we can do an even better job in this time of ensuring that we're amplifying the voices of folks inside, how we can work together as a community, as a collective, to share the stories that we're hearing coming from inside. And those stories may be in written form, but they also may be through visual art, through music, and acknowledging just the power that the arts have, that creative expression has to connect us and to inspire empathy, inspire action. And so just really, really focusing in on the need to continue creating outlets for that expression, and platforms out here so that the world can see just how much ingenuity and creativity exists within the people who, as Laurie said, we are so quick to sideline in our society. So that's really, you know, we're focused so much on the here and now at this time that, as I said, it is a little tricky to try to envision what the future beyond COVID-19 will be like. And that being said, coming from a perspective of someone, myself, who really values the role that the arts can play in movement. I mean, I have always, I think why I got into this work is because I have always seen artistic expression as a liberatory act, as an act of rebellion, as an act of freedom, and a way for people who we've attempted to silence to sustain their voices, to ensure that they're heard. And I believe that the arts will play an integral role in how we reimagine what justice looks like in this country and feels like in this country. I think this is an opportunity for us to be reflecting on how, as creatives, how as artists, both inside and outside of prison, we can work together to tap into our moral imaginations, our creative imaginations, and through our acts of creative expression, really begin to explore new ways of addressing harm, new ways of creating safety in our communities. And so that's kind of the question that's been floating around in my head. And I think maybe more time now, more space now, more reason now even to reflect on that and to be working in collaboration across the field to talk about that some more. So not just, for me, I don't just envision a future where we're continuing to make sure that people inside have access to opportunities to express themselves creatively, to build community around arts engagement, to stay connected with their families through the arts. We know all of that is essential and valuable. And my hope is that we can go far beyond that and look at how the arts can inform our movement away from punitive, retributive forms of justice and towards something, that's more transformative, more restorative. So that's what I'm thinking about. I don't have the answers. It's just what I dream and imagine, and am wanting to dive into some more and talk to people about some more. And it's where I kind of hope my organization will be steering towards in the future. And though, like I said, right now, it's all about how do we make sure that folks inside are able to continue to engage their creativity, continue to use their voices, and make sure that all of us out here are able to continue to connect with folks inside through that process and support that process, and create as many platforms as possible for their work and their voices to be seen and heard. So I think that's all for me. And I will hand it back to you, Curt.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Appreciate that. Next, Alma Robinson from California Lawyers for the Arts. Alma.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be with so many colleagues that I've known for a few years on these trails of arts in corrections. I'm intrigued that you're going to put a full conference online and we're going to experience it virtually. Thank you, Scott and Curt, for being part of this inaugural test case, so to speak. I wonder where we are now in terms of advocacy, but there's no time to really worry about it because we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So what that means for me in terms of California Lawyers for the Arts work at this venue, at this intersection of arts and corrections, is to try to maintain the networks that are already effective and working well. That includes networks of people who work in arts in education. Let's take a brief detour. Not too long ago, and I haven't updated my sense of this, half of the Black and Latino boys who were in public high schools in California were not graduating. Half of those ended up in the justice system. Meantime, there were people proving that kids who had arts education when they were in elementary school, junior high, high school, were much more likely to complete their education and go on to a fulfilling life. So that's the first problem that we have as a society, is that arts education is not valued. And so when we speak about trying to get people credit for arts programs inside, there's a bigger picture of indifference to the value of the arts. And the way we have to overcome that, I think, is through evaluation, through evidence-based research. We've had some success with that, working with Sabra and Laurie and Curt and others around the country currently to try to show that arts programs really do help with rehabilitation in very tangible ways for people who are incarcerated. An example is an NEA project that we're currently engaged in. It's on hold because of COVID, but we're working with arts council leaders in 5 states, including New York, Michigan, Ohio, Texas, and Louisiana, to provide the same pre and post surveys that were effective in California in generating sustainable funding for arts and corrections in the state prison system in California. We were able to complete the first demonstration project in New York just before COVID slammed the door. Even before the participants had completed the post-evaluation survey, the Department of Corrections went to the State Arts Council director and requested that she find support to place artists in 5 more state prisons. This demonstration project started in December last year and completed in February. And we are now evaluating the results so that we can publish them. It'll be a standalone study. We were hoping to have 4 or 5 from each state that we could aggregate, but the results from this first program were so incredible that it proved the point by itself. So we're about to publish those results. Meantime, back in November, I got a call from the National Endowment for the Arts, which is funding this national expansion. And they wanted to know if the chairman could come and visit us and see what we were doing. We were able to put together, with Laurie's help, a fantastic visit at San Quentin and talk to the men who are engaged in arts programs there, as fine arts, as well as a movement class. And she was so thoroughly impressed and intrigued and motivated about from the conversations that she was having with the participants, that she became very inspired about this work. And I think she would be a great advocate for us to work with others that might be potential funders. Of course, funding is very challenging right now due to COVID and all of the problems that you cited earlier, Curt, the unemployment, lack of commerce, the economy has crashed. There are people who have tremendous food insecurity, problems paying the rent. And so foundations and other philanthropists are trying to step up and meet some of these basic needs. Meanwhile, we're seeing that the prisons are an incredible source of spreading because of the close quarters and the containment, and that not only are the incarcerated people getting infected with the virus, also the people that work there are, and they're going home to their families. So in California, we're seeing as a result of the budget issues in our state, the governor has proposed closing 2 prisons over the next 2 to 3 years. And his previous plan was to close 1 prison in 5 years. So COVID is having a direct effect on decarceration. Many people across the country are being released earlier than they would have otherwise. Maybe they were on a list already, but those lists are being accelerated. So there's hope that there will be some good news out of COVID in this direction. Another thing that I wanted to call attention to was the need for us to be more involved in reentry programs to help people find their footing when they come out. They come out with very scarce resources and networks, and those who've been involved in the arts, which is a program that Sabra created with the Actors Gang, and some of the programs that Laurie's group, William James Association, is involved with, do have reentry programs, but they're often very, how do I want to say this? They are often
paltry.
Sorry, we seem to have some technical difficulties. We dropped Alma, so we'll try to get her back as quickly as possible. In the meantime, I think I'll segue to our last speaker, Wendy Staggs, who is a published poet and a returned citizen. Wendy?
Hi, Curt. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Wendy Staggs. I am a returning citizen, and I literally found healing through many different forms of art. I did engage in the Actors Gang Prison Project. I engaged in visual arts with the prison arts community that I am a part of. I'm actually the first alumni that is an alumni. That is a advisory board member. And I continue to stay engaged with programs that I did while I was in because it keeps me well. Now, I think about what the words "I'm fighting for my life" means to the people inside now. Before, I think fighting for their life, if they were a lifer, meant, you know, getting groups done, getting healing, finding things that were necessary for their board hearings. And now, at this point, I think words "fighting for my life" mean a whole different definition. I feel like people are very scared. For us to ever go back in also brings fear, because staff, and I'm not blaming staff, I'm just saying that staff are the ones who brought COVID into the prison, and that was brought to the state's attention before it happened. There could have been staff testing from the very beginning, and that was not implemented, and now we have a big mess. And we had a car caravan this past Saturday at California Institution for Women and California Institution for Men, which are two of the highest populated prisons. We have had 9 deaths at the CIM prison, and I feel like right now, being locked in a 6x8 cell gives people a whole different outlook on life. They cannot be out, they're locked down, they can't talk to their family, they can't visit, they don't know if they're gonna contract it, they don't know if they're gonna die, they may never see their families again. It's a whole different ball game for the people that are on the inside. And I want to say that when I was doing the arts, work that was done by myself, but it would not have been able to be done without the vessels of the organizations that were there providing those services for us, such as Annie Buckley's community-based art, Sabra Williams, Actors Gang. I just feel like to have people on your team is important, but it's even more so necessary to have that interaction with people. And so now with the Prison Arts Collective, we're talking about, we've made packets as far as like drawing, or packets about creative writing, but instead of being able to be supported in that work and sit with other people and hear other people's input and do theater exercises and do theater work in happiness, sadness, anger, and fear. When you're doing those things, you're vulnerable, but you're in a space that allows other people to support you. And I feel so unsure about us offering any type of trauma-informed or work that would open somebody's trauma while they are sitting in their cell alone. Because who do they have to fall back on when they are feeling very open and raw and have discovered something? And I know women that hid themselves because they cut themselves every single day. And they didn't wear shorts. They didn't wear short sleeves. They wore things that would cover those wounds because that's how they release their pain. And if we're offering packets and things like this that is going to open somebody's wounds, how are we to support them in the middle of that search through their trauma? For myself, I went in very broken from domestic violence. I had lost my kids to foster care and their father, and I just was completely broken. And I actually found spaces where people told me it was okay to be broken. And I think often we're told by society that we're criminals, we're cast outs, we're no longer valued, you're a prisoner, you're a convict, you're an inmate, you're a loser. We come out, we can't get housing, we can't get work, we can't, even when we go back to school and revive ourselves, we can't even get certification or licensing. Even when we have proven that we can restore, the knowledge that's in us, or find the part that we never knew existed, even then we're told, nah, you're still not worthy. And so I feel like at this time, the worst for all of us, for everybody, and it's not just people who are on the inside, it's people who have just gotten out. I'm a member of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and I'm a mentor for that program. And we have a ride home program. And during these times, I have many friends that work in production, which has been shut down. Hollywood has been shut down. And they have engaged in the Ride Home program. And I wonder, when somebody has been in for 25 years, when they have been in for, 30, 40 years, I wonder, what is it going to be like when they come home and they still are isolated? They don't have the support that so let me just give you an example. On the inside, I was able to just soar. I was able to become a part of my community. I was a WAC representative, a Women's Advisory Council, and I was always engaging in this and that. And then when I got released, I was put with an ankle monitor into a drug program, and I had lost my complete identity. Again, I had to start over from ground zero with people who were just coming off the streets, with their drugs behavior and everything else, right? Who are just now suffering from that. And I had to find myself all over again. And that's why I reached back out to the programs that I was a part of, because I needed to be a part of that. And here we have these people that are being released after doing decades and they're locked in a room, or they go to a program and they can't talk to anybody and they can't do this. And it's like, I'm so concerned about what's going to happen to them, because it's the same. We're on lockdown, right? And anybody who's done time in prison knows what lockdown is. And so they're, you know, doing art, or they're doing running, or they're doing exercising or writing, or things that we forget to do when we come back out because life is in session. And, you know, there's one thing that Sabra told me when we were in the Actors Gang. She didn't just tell me, she told all of us. And I've actually been published and I wrote about this, but it's the simplest thing, but yet it's so profound. The work doesn't stop at the door. When you walk out of the door, you can still be working on yourself, but it takes a village. It takes a village. And that means that you have people that are going to surround you in those steps of trying to, you know, accelerate your life, to step out of what was known to you. What was known is what got us in trouble. You know, it was us being in trauma and trying to find a way out of that and making poor choices. Now we're expected to be upstanding citizens. We can't have jobs. We can't have housing because we are felons, but we're expected to be out here and live appropriately. So when we're talking about what this is going to look like, I'm talking about what it already looks like for people who are being released that don't have any support. We're not allowed to go here. We're not allowed to go there. We can't go together. And they've been by themselves all these years. I don't know. I know what the women inside are thinking right now, but I don't know what it's like, because they're in fear for their lives. And where things could have been prevented, they weren't. And they feel like their lives are not valued. And we as advocates, especially myself, when I was in prison, I was in prison 20 years ago. When I went back, I realized that all those women that were there 20 years were still there. And I had gotten out, started a family, gone to school, graduated top of my class. I come back to prison 20 years later and they're still fighting for their lives. And I just thought to myself, since I found healing, I have a responsibility to keep putting my hand back to the ones that were left behind. And when I do that, I keep myself well. We're struggling. I'm struggling to do that. All the meetings that we have to do are on Zoom, and it's a difficult time. It's a difficult time. And so I ask you one thing. When all of you are advocating, I ask that you always include the voices of us. I ask that you always include, or the thoughts, or the hurts, or the direction, because I have many times, and I'm going to say not with anybody that is on this call, because I have had interactions with everybody on this call, and I know that you guys are very sensitive to the work that you do and the language that you use. But I ask everybody that's out there that when you engage in work, you don't decide what we need. Ask us what we need. Don't decide for us. With that being said, I want to say thank you for everybody that does the work, because for so long we felt forgotten. And now that the arts are back, there's so many organizations that really want to come in and offer us things. I don't know what that looks like in the future, but I've tried to go back in and they won't let me. I was in that prison, or I was here, and it's always a barrier. But just like you, I will not give up. Continue to fight for the ones that have become voiceless, and I will fight for them until then.
Thank you, Wendy. Beautifully said. Let's go back to Alma and see if we can finish up with part 2 before we lost her. Did we lose her again?
No, I'm here, but
Okay.
I'm trying to find the video. There we are. Okay.
Perfect.
Well, I think that was a great segue, Wendy, because I was starting to think out loud about reentry. And I think that is a huge question for how we can exercise more thoughtful ways to engage and support people who are coming out. There's so much technology that's changing constantly. It's very hard for people to grapple with this new reality. The California Arts Council has some reentry programs that are funded, but only for 1 year at a time. So by the time you get this program started, it may not last very long. So we really need to think about sustainable programs and support for people that need help, need a helping hand. One of the consultants that we hired last year with our Art for Justice grant created this wonderful guidebook. I don't know if you can see it, your entryway into the entertainment industry. Her name is Beverly Isigohi. And it's based on some very detailed work that she did for us in collaboration with the Urban League of Atlanta. The Urban League is a civil rights organization that has been involved with job training. And in Atlanta, they had been getting a labor department grant for several years, but they hadn't thought about how to apply it to people coming out of incarceration until Beverly started to work with us at our Art for Justice Forum that was held at Emory University 2 years ago. So she wanted to create this pathway for people to get apprenticeships in the entertainment industry. Several studios got interested in it. They had started some pre-apprenticeship opportunities, and they were going to be mentoring people. And of course, that's now on hold because the whole studio production industry is in a hiatus, as you mentioned earlier. But there are opportunities like this that are seeking support. And I think we just have to keep seeding the ground, keep plowing, and keep trying to find a way to support people that really deserve it, that never had these opportunities, the mentoring, the job training programs when they were younger, and might have not gotten onto that path leading from trauma to mistakes to incarceration. Sometimes the mistakes aren't theirs. They just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and got caught up by the justice system. So I think there's going to be a new wave of enlightenment around the way we treat so many people so unfairly, so unjustly. And there'll still be a need for our work, for artists to step up and become guides and mentors as people find their way back into a world that we hope will be more civilized as we go forward. Thanks, Curt.
Thank you, Alma, very much. Sabra has one last statement, and then we'll come back for a 10-minute conversation amongst ourselves. Sabra.
Yeah, I just wanted to say we're all advocates here, activists. I call myself an activist. Today, on May 28th, there are 952 people who are incarcerated who are positive, and there have been 9 deaths at the California Institution for Men. I don't know if this is a true statement, but as far as I know, on this Zoom, the person who got in their car and took a risk and went outside CIW was somebody who was formerly incarcerated, and that was Wendy Staggs. She went there as an advocate and put her life out there to be able to raise awareness for other women who are still incarcerated. So I talked about advocacy, and I know that we're all doing our bit online as we can today, but Wendy actually went and advocated in person. So I just want to say thank you to Wendy, and thank you for being such a great example. Thank you.
Thanks, Sabra. So come on up back, put your video and your microphones on. We've got about 10 minutes to talk amongst ourselves. Anything, I heard, what I heard were so many similarities and connections, and so it just reinforced the pride that I have in knowing you and the amazing work that you do, and having had the opportunity to work with some of you just thrills me and makes me a better human being, and so I'm sort of bursting here. So any connections you had amongst yourselves? Yeah, Laurie.
I just want to call out that that our wonderful Governor Newsom is talking about closing prisons today in response to the budget crisis that looms large, and I'd be happy to be, lose my job, lose my work. I mean, I'd rather do stuff in this reentry realm. And I also just really love what Wendy Staggs really, makes me think about, that I think about all the time, which is that we're getting to experience in some way what people in prison get to experience all the time. We're in confinement. We're being, our freedom is being limited in major ways. And I just think that's really important for us to all, feel the compassion for how that must be day in, day out for years and years and years.
Yeah. Especially when our version is super privileged and comfortable.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Of course.
Well, and we also see, just sort of building on that, at least in my home state now of Michigan, people that don't do very well with being told what they can or can't do. And, I mean, it boggles my mind, the complaints and the lunacy and the selfishness and I'm so happy that in Michigan we have a really smart, strong governor, and her team are amazing. And my other home state of Kentucky, same thing, brilliant, wonderful governor in Illinois and California. And so, leadership steps forth. I listen to Cuomo's press conference every day. My wife will send me a note that says, Cuomo in 10, and we rush down there because it's about leadership, and it's about not being told no and saying, if you're not going to do it, then we're going to do it. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I will say that, like Laurie, I was super excited to hear Governor Newsom, first of all, say he's going to close the entire Department of Juvenile Justice. That is mind-blowing and must happen. And then he's going to close 2 prisons in the next 2 years. But the fact that, like Laurie says, that was his response to COVID, where usually in the past the response has been, oh, we need safety, and now we must cut the arts. And he did all of it without cutting programs. In fact, noticing that he would save money by doing that can be invested in programs. And that blew my mind. And I talk particularly about DJJ, the Department of Juvenile Justice, because the young people who are incarcerated are often ignored, like women. And one of the things we've been doing at Creative Acts in the last couple of years is that we created this workshop called Art Attacks, which is an arts-based civic engagement workshop, because in the counties, people can vote who are incarcerated. So our kids inside were able to vote, right? So when I asked probation, oh, now they can vote. So how many are you, signing up? How many are you registering? And they said 600. But when I asked them how many had actually voted, they said 35. And I was like, yes, because you're not engaging them. It's just a probation officer saying, sign this paper. So what we did is that we know everybody here listening and on this call knows the power of the arts to engage and to be able to help people receive things that they can't receive or hear in other ways, especially people who are traumatized, and to raise people to understand their power, and for us the tool of voting as a way to change their communities. And so we went in, and the people that we worked with, the young people, 86% of them voted in the primary elections, which is unheard of even on the outside. But we didn't do anything special. We brought the arts as the boat to float civic engagement in. And so now we're working with March for Our Lives to create a connection, so when they come back, they can join the local March for Our Lives chapter and become leaders, to become youth leaders in our country. And so I feel like, you know, the arts can be used in so many ways. And as artists, we've become super corporate in our approach in the last, you know, few years. It's been about profit in our theaters. And even as arts organizations, when we meet and we try to envision the future, we sit around a table in an absolute corporate approach. But for us as artists, I think at this time, we've got to throw out the table and use the arts in the process so that we can reimagine in ways that nobody else can what the future is going to be like. So yeah, that just made me, hearing what people were saying, made me think about that. And by the way, we have a DA that might win here, George Gascon in LA, who wants the arts in his process as a DA. I mean, mind-blowing.
Well, we trained him in San Francisco. But I do want to mention that our Congresswoman, whom you all familiar with, Nancy Pelosi, was having a breakfast meeting. She's just so smart with all of her constituents. And at the end of the gathering, I said hello to her. And she looked at me with a little bit of recognition and she said, you know, seeing you makes me think the arts could bring us together. And so I want to hold her to that.
Yeah.
And as far as Newsom's plan goes, when you look at his budget, he talks about rehabilitation. There's one item for a $27 million package for reentry programs that would have been a competitive grant, but it's been put on hold because of the budget crisis. But it's interesting that he was thinking in that direction, and that's something that might come back later, and it might come back sooner if the states can get some stimulus money, as you know, as we're hoping, so that there won't just be mass chaos with local and state governments around the country. Yeah, it's a tough time, but you do see these rays of hope coming through.
Yep. Wendy, Jason, anything to connect or add to?
Unmuting. No, I mean, everybody is saying it so beautifully. I don't actually have anything to add. Thank you.
Great. Well, we will gather again. This will go out online, be out there for a week, and I can't wait for us to come back together, because then our constituency, the Shakespeare in Prisons Network, and your constituencies will have people, I hope, represented from all, and we'll just see what ideas, what things generate in them to continue the conversation, to continue the connection, to continue the celebration of the good work. It's in this time, it's just so easy to celebrate all the down stuff, and we have to look for the victories and look for the positive stories, and I do think that they are in the arts. So I thank each and every one of you for your commitment to doing this, and I look forward to being with you again June 8th.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I just say one last thing? I'm sorry.
Please.
I just wanted to say that knowing all of you personally, except Wendy, which I'm still a part of the Justice Coalition, Justice Art Coalition, I want to say personally from all of our returning citizens that people like you in our lives matter. When you guys welcome us into these spaces and allow us to have a voice in these spaces, it really makes the conversation important and different. And I just wanted to say thank you for always in all of super.
Well, I learned years and years ago when I was working with a warden in Kentucky, and he put it down to just a bit. He was just a homespun guy, and he could just take very complex things and spin them out in a very understandable way. He always said, don't ask me if I'm doing a good job. This is Larry Chandler. Don't ask me if I'm doing a good job. Talk to the prisoners. That's our product. We don't talk to the MD, to the Kentucky Department of Corrections. Don't talk to the legislator. It says, talk to our prisoners. They are our product. And I never forgot that. And I learned that very early on when I started working in corrections. So that's the way I look at it is I say the same thing. Don't ask me if I'm a success in prison. Here, go talk to these guys that I've been working with. Let them tell you. They speak much more eloquently than I do.
And Curt, I just want to thank you so much for your work. You've been a mentor to me since I started the Prison Project 15 years ago. And I just want to thank you. You've been such a great leader in this space. Thank you.
Well, it's my joy to do this. You know, it's an honor to do this. And the more that we spread, the more contact that we have with new people coming up. I'm really invigorated with the next generation that's coming up, and the stuff that Wendy is doing online. I just see so many people that are in their 20s that are passionate and smart and committed, and that's what we need. And because I'm not going to be around forever. I hope to be around for a little longer, but
right. No, Curt, some of us old timers have been, kind of creating a network and stuff, and we need what Wendy is doing with a more formalized network that is just so wonderful. I mean, I know that Shakespeare in Prison has a wonderful network. That's a little section, but the Justice Arts Coalition is really doing amazing things, and like it's blossoming right now through this coronavirus situation.
Blossoming on Zoom.
But it's blossoming because we're outside of our silos. In the silos, we get fed as artists. We get that connection with our participants that is really so beautiful. It's just such a beautiful human connection where it's needed most. And then and so we don't get to have that right now. And we're working to get back into it and stuff, but it's wonderful to see the Justice Arts Coalition kind of filling the gap, filling the void, and helping to keep that connection that is so it's so much a part of what we do as human beings and as artists, and just really trying to create beauty around us and connect us all. Thank you.
And one last shout out to Scott Jackson, who's the man behind the scenes, who's done the recording, and he's been my partner in crime for a number of years now. Maybe that's the wrong term, but we have done some criminal things, just haven't been caught. I really appreciate having him as my partner in crime in doing this work with the Shakespeare in Prisons Conference. So if we all need to just hang around a bit as Scott finishes up the recording, unless anyone has one final exit statement that you'd like to make. If not, we'll be back here June 8th. And I can't wait to see what our constituencies bring to us.